noise!
Hello and welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm. Brought to you by funkinstuff.net, this is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I am your host, Scott Dr. GX Goldfine, musicologist, creative arts journalist, and multimedia pro. Whether you're watching the video version of this show or the audio-only podcast version, I thank you so much for your continued interest and support in this show. If you enjoy this programming, there are several ways to help support Truth and Rhythm, as well as contribute to further enhancements and expansion, plus get some sweet perks and rewards in the process. First, subscribe to the Funkin' Stuff channel on YouTube, which is where Truth and Rhythm lives, and be an advocate by spreading the word among fellow funk, jazz, and R&B music lovers. Second, join Truth and Rhythm's new membership program through Patreon, which features 3 tiers for truth believers, truth seekers, and truth crusaders. You can also submit a direct donation to the cause anytime at funkinstuff.net. At that site, which is loaded with awesome content, you can also purchase the book Everything's on the One, The First Guide of Funk, shop for official Truth and Rhythm and Funkin' Stuff merchandise, and use the Amazon links for all of your online purchases, which allocates a percentage to this show. Sponsorship opportunities are available as well. Contact me directly at scottg@funkinstuff.net. For those of you who go the extra step in supporting the show, you have my heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to continue to shine the light on those special artists whose quest is to find truth in rhythm. I'm pleased to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership Bernard Fowler, an extraordinary singer and composer who since the late 1970s has lent his voice to a massive amount of wonderful and envelope-pushing music, and in doing so has defied his work being simply categorized. Perhaps best known for his 35-plus years recording and touring with the Rolling Stones, as well as its individual members, he has also collaborated with an incredible list of other A-list leading-edge artists. They include Bill Laswell and Material, Herbie Hancock, Lenny White, Gil Scott-Heron, Sly Robbie, Bootsy Collins, Duran Duran, Living Colour, Bonnie Raitt, Alice Cooper, Willie Nelson, Alpert, Yoko Ono, and many others. In addition, he is a member of the industrial funk band Tackhead and has released 3 solo albums of his own. The most recent, 2019's Inside Out, which deconstructs Stone's classics and deep cuts. Whoa, Bernard, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you for having me, Scott. Good to see you, brother.
Great to see you too, man. How you holding up through everything?
Oh, man, the best I can. The best I can, like everybody else, trying to stay as busy as I can, going a little stir crazy, but, trying to make the best of it and not let it get to me too much.
Yeah. Well, hang in there, like all of us. The light, hopefully, is at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
And, it's just an honor to have you on. Been a fan for a long time, so really looking forward to jumping into it with you here.
Thank you.
So, I understand you're from New York originally, right?
Born and raised in New York City.
All right.
I grew up in Long Island City, in the Queensbridge projects. Probably most people would know Queensbridge from Brother Nas. Nas is from Queensbridge, and a bunch of other folks. Mobb Deep is from Queensbridge. There's a few of us. Marley Marl is from Queensbridge. Sherry Ellis, the Name Game, she's from Queensbridge.
Okay.
So it's a lot of us.
Sounds like you kind of led the way though, because everyone else came after you that you mentioned, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe I was probably the first one to get out of there.
What drove you to music in the first place and singing?
What drove me there? It's kind of a long story, Scott. I always enjoyed singing. The first gig I ever did wasn't a singing gig. Well, I don't even know if you can call it a gig. I started playing instruments in school, and I sang in the chorus in school. But I was more of a jock then. And but I just dabbled in music, and one day this girl was dating this guy, and after a basketball game, I was hanging out with some friends drinking beer, underage, of course, and the guy heard me singing, and he said, "Hey man, you sound good. I play guitar in a band. I'm looking for a guitar. I'm looking for a singer." And he said, "Come and audition." And I said, "Yeah, okay." And I never showed up. And he came to my house and told my mother. And my mother said, "You told this guy you were gonna go and meet him?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She said, "Well, he came by here. You need to go there, or you need to tell him that you're not going to do it." And I ran into the guy. And he cussed me out. And that was kind of like a challenge to me. I think I didn't go because I was a bit nervous. I was nervous about doing it. So eventually I did. I got on the subway and went to Jamaica, Queens, and auditioned for this band. The name of the band was Total Eclipse, and they're still playing around still till today. And I auditioned for the band, and a week after I auditioned for that band, I was in Media Sound on 57th Street, probably one of the premier studios at the time, Media Sound. And I was in Media Sound recording an album with this band. Still wasn't sure. I was still playing ball, got to high school, and there's a guy on the team. He was older than I was, and I don't think he liked me because, we had to go to practice at 6:30 in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning before class started. And after practice, the coach, "Hey, Fowler, come to my office," and he says, "What's this I hear about, after practice," because we had two practice, one in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, and in afternoon at the end of school. And then I would leave there and I'd go to this band rehearsal. So he says, "What's this I hear about you playing with the band?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm playing with the band. You should come check it out." He said, "No, I won't be doing that." And he said, "And you need to make a choice. You're either going to play ball or you're going to sing with this band, but you're not going to do both." And I thought he was kidding. And I remember saying to him, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm serious." And I stood there in his office and I started crying. And I looked at him. I couldn't believe he gave me that ultimatum. And I looked at him and I said, "Fuck you." And I quit. I stopped playing ball. And I stopped playing ball, which was really hard for me because I played ball, most of my young life. And a lot of guys that I played ball with actually ended up playing pro ball. And so I started singing with this band on a regular basis.
I'm sorry, you're talking what sport?
Basketball.
Basketball.
basketball. And so I started singing with the band on a regular basis. And, one thing led to another. I left school. I didn't leave school. A lot of the guys in the band were older than I was. In fact, all of them were older than I was. And most of them were attending Queens College, which had a really good music program. And I had been playing trombone in school. So I started going with them. They would take me to York College to a jazz workshop so I could, brush up on my trombone, because the band had a full horn section. Well, with me, it was a complete horn section. And went to Queens College for a little while. Which was not an easy college to get in, but I guess I was doing okay in school, and I was accepted to Queens College. And maybe after a year and a half there, I had no money. I had no money, and on the weekends, I was playing with the band, and I was making, a little bit of coin, and I needed to do something. I needed to do something. So I remember being on the train going home, and I was praying to myself, and I decided that I would leave college and pursue music full time. And, one thing happened after another. And there it is. That's, pretty much how it started. But again, my first gig, the first time I ever played in front of an audience, I played upright bass. I also played upright bass in the school orchestra. And growing up, I heard a lot of salsa. My older brother brought those records home. Back then, I grew up in a Black Puerto Rican neighborhood predominantly. And, salsa, we listened to salsa like we listened to top 40. And so there was a piano player, a Latin piano player in the neighborhood by the name of Freddie Crespo. And he was doing a show in the neighborhood at the community center. And he asked me to come and play. And that was the first time that I performed in front of people. I played upright bass.
So you were able to read music, and you had that background?
Yeah, I was able to read music at that time.
Uh-huh. And I'm sure that foundation helped you down the line. When did it become apparent to you that you were going to really focus on singing, and who are some of your singing influences?
Well, when I joined the band Total Eclipse, I was the lead singer. I was the front man of the band. So, and some of my influences, I would have to say I was influenced by everything that I heard. As a kid, my mother used to make me take a nap, and she would always have the radio on. It was always on of course, it was on WWRL, but some days it wasn't. Some days it was Cousin Brucey. Some days it was Wolfman Jack. So I listened to I listened to music just all my life. I played my mother and my father's records, and they had records like Eddie Taylor, J.B. Lenoir, Mahalia Jackson, Joe Tex, Lloyd Price, a lot of soul, blues, and gospel. But I think from the radio, I was listening to a lot of rock and roll on the radio. And it's funny, when I was growing up, in my neighborhood, you listen to soul music. And I would never let anybody in the neighborhood know that I liked that rock and roll I was hearing. Because if you said something like that, they'd look at you and say, man, that's white boy music. but I was grooving on white boy music as well as the music that I grew up listening to. So the influence is pretty vast. I wanted to be one of the Temptations. That was my favorite singing group growing up. Chuck Berry, I did a mean Chuck Berry. I did a mean duck walk. My dad used to give me money to do it in front of family members. And funny enough, the first album that my dad ever bought home and gave to me, he gave it to me, was Rolling Stones 12 by 5. So it's kind of ironic that I end up spending as much time with them as I have.
Wow. Yeah, well, definitely can, hear all that diverse influence throughout your career. It's clear that you took that all in like a sponge,
Yeah,
and distilled it out in your own way.
It has served me well.
Yeah. And of course, the irony is, those white boy groups, they were redoing black music in most cases anyway. So
this is true. Yeah. This is true. But a lot of people from my neighborhood, they didn't know that.
Exactly. So is there any one or two, you mentioned the Temptations, or is there, a couple of singers that you really sort of emulated or, really kept your ear glued to?
Probably David Ruffin, Sly Stone, Otis Redding, Joe Tex, Don Covey, which was a huge influence on Mick Jagger. I grew up listening to Don Covey. As a matter of fact, Don Covey used to try to date my mom. So as a little kid, Don Covey was in my house. I remember him being there. He always wore a hat, and he was kind of a flashy dresser. I remember one day, he had come to my house a couple of times, and I remember my mother asking me, "Honey, what you think about him? You like him?" I said, "No, Ma, I don't like him."
His singing's okay, but he's got to go.
Yeah. Nobody was good enough for Mom.
Yeah. Wow. So, I became aware of you through, Future Shock and Herbie Hancock. What should viewers know about your career prior to that?
Before I joined Herbie Hancock, how I got there. The band The Total Eclipse. One of the guys in The Total Eclipse, I had been there, and I think, my time there had run its course, or it was getting close to the end of that. And there was a drummer that came in and played with The Total Eclipse. His name was Stephen Brown. And Stephen Brown left The Total Eclipse. And I was kind of on my way out also. And he came and he called me, and he had an idea about putting some guys together, and he introduced me to some new cats, and we formed a band. Myself, Stephen Brown, and some other guys that you probably wouldn't know by name, and we formed the band called the New York City Peach Boys. And the New York City Peach Boys, I had my first hit record with the New York City Peach Boys. was a song. Well, there were two songs called "Don't Make Me Wait" and "Life Is Something Special." And we were supported by a really well-known DJ, the first celebrity DJ by the name of Larry Levan. And I couldn't walk out of my house without hearing those songs on the radio. It was surreal. I mean, you want to get heard on the radio, but when it happens like it had happened, I mean, people in the neighborhood were calling me by the title of the song. They weren't calling me Bernard. They said, "Yo, don't make me wait." I mean, it played 24/7, and it still plays till this day. My daughters call me. My daughters, who are like 25 and 26 and live in New York, they'll call and say, "Dad, you're on the radio again. You're on the radio again." So that was the first. That was the first project that really got me some attention. And you know like I'm sure bands. The hardest thing to keep together in the music business is a band. Things started going wrong in the band, and just as things started going wrong, I got a call from a cat named Roger Trilling. Roger Trilling used to work with Bill Laswell. He was like Bill Laswell's man Friday at the time, and he called me, and I went and I met with him, and I met with Bill. And Bill had a song. Bill was doing Material at the time with Michael Beinhorn, and they were doing an album. That album ended up being the album called One Down. And they asked me to sing, and I sang it. I sang on that album. And by the way, that was one of it might have been the very first recording, if not close to the very first album that Whitney Houston had been on. Whitney Houston sang a song on that album. It was me. I sang, I think, maybe two songs, two, Nona Hendrix and Whitney Houston.
But she must have been a teenager.
Oh, yes, she was a youngster. And I soon left the Peach Boys. I was doing Material, and during that time, Bill Laswell, he was doing a lot of production, and he was producing a record for Herbie. And that record the album was Future Shock, and the record that most people would be familiar with would be Rocket.
Yeah.
That was.
But now, what was your impression of Bill Laswell when you first met him? Because he's been so prolific, but he's such an enigma, and I've even had him on the show. And I still don't know, that much about him, even after having him on the show, because he kind of keeps things close to the vest. At least he did with me.
Yes, he does. He did then, and he does now. But I love Bill. Bill, I've said this before to people. Bill split my head right down the middle. Bill turned me on to artists and music that I had never heard before. He took me out of where I was and introduced me to a whole nother world. And I gravitated to him, and I stuck. I mean, whenever I knew he was in the studio, whether I was working or not, I'd go just to sit there and listen to what he was doing and watch how he was doing it. He was a master of taking people from different genres and putting them together and making it work. Just incredible. And, people. I mean, he introduced me to people like Sonny Chirac and Arto Lindsay. Um, Fode Muso Suso, Peter Bratzmann, the German sax player. I mean, I he just turned me on to so much music. And as a matter of fact, the first time I ever left the country was with Bill. The first time I left New York and went to Europe was with Bill. And that was behind the One Down album, Material One Down album, that which I think did very, very good for them. And also, it was the beginning of hip hop.
Mm.
I think Bill was one of, if not the first, one of the first, one of the first cats to produce early hip hop, early rap stuff. And so, yeah, Bill was it's a little straight because Bill was really quiet. He was really quiet till you really got to meet him. And if he liked you, he would talk with you. You can talk with him. You can have conversations, and there are always good conversations about music, and listening to him tell stories about the different people that he had played with. So anyway, during that, after the Material One Down, Bill started producing these tracks for Herbie Hancock. And I had to leave the Peach Boys. It was just toxic. It was toxic, and I was feeling kind of lost. And here comes Bill. He calls me and he says, "Hey, come to the studio. I want you to sing on this Herbie Hancock record." And there was a slight problem. I was under contract, and he knew it. And he said, "It's okay. Come on, we'll fix it." So I went to the studio and I sang on the tracks, and I used an alias. And I sang in a falsetto for the title song of the record, Future Shock.
Kind of an homage to Curtis, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So when Rocket came out, Rocket, as we know, was huge record. And again, I got a call from Bill and said, "Hey, man," he asked me, he said, "Yo, man, do you want to go on the road with Herbie Hancock?" I thought he was kidding. He wasn't kidding. And then I went, I met Herbie. The next thing I know, I'm on the road touring with Herbie Hancock. I'm on the road touring with Herbie Hancock, singing, of course, because a lot of the samples on that record, they were me. So I would, and also the first sample keyboard Herbie had, which was, the Fairlight. So that was my gig. I sang and played samples on the Fairlight. And it was a great experience. It was we toured for several years. Herbie won a Grammy. That was his first, Grammy win.
Which is crazy, but yeah.
Yep, which is crazy. And, something I remember about that time was, the mixed feelings from the jazz world about that record Herbie had done.
He was always doing that to the jazz crowd.
Yes. Oh boy, they gave him shit for it, but you know what? He won the Grammy, didn't he?
but I remember seeing the video of you in Japan with that band.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. And
Was that the video where I walked out into the audience?
I'm not sure. You're wearing, I think, like a white striped kind of jacket or something, and you were playing percussion and doing some songs. And
Right.
yeah, you were. It impressed me that you were so dynamic out front doing the vocals. I mean, you were really like taking over, like you were the leader of the whole band when you went out for your spotlight singing.
Well, it's kind of hard to sing lead and stand in the background. And I don't think that would have been very entertaining.
Well, no. But, it's still Herbie's got the marquee.
Yes.
But you definitely had your spotlight.
Right on. And, that's, no matter what spotlight was shining on me during that time, it was still the Herbie Hancock show. It was the Herbie Hancock show, and it was, it's funny because, when this is really strange. When I got that gig, we were doing a show in New York on the pier. I think it was a Pepsi, pier show or something. And some of the guys I grew up with in my neighborhood were at that show, and I was sitting on the tour bus, and one of my best friends, I saw him and I grabbed him and I took him on the tour bus, and he reminded me of something. I used to go to his house and we used to listen, and I used to read albums and we'd listen to music. And he said to me, Bernard, I remember being in the living room. We were listening to Herbie, and I said to him, I can't wait till I'm good enough to sing with Herbie Hancock.
Wow. Prophetic.
When he said that, I said, oh, I remembered that day. I remembered it clear as day. I said, man, you are right. I remember that day, Earl. I remember that day. And there I was singing with her, fronting Herbie's band. Incredible.
Wow.
Incredible.
And then you also made an appearance on the next record too, right?
Yes, that was
Sound System.
Sound System. That's right. I sang the single. I think "People Are Changing" was the name of the single. Yes.
And,
I almost forgot that. Yeah.
And it was around that same time when you somehow got connected with Mick Jagger and he did a solo record. And is that the correct timeline?
It was during that time. I think I'd been on the road with Herbie maybe a year and a half or so, and we had a break from the tour. And before the tour, I had got an apartment, my first apartment, and I walk into the apartment and the telephone rings and it's Bill. Bernard. Hey, Bill. How you doing? I said, cool, man, cool. I said, I just walked in the door. He said, go to the airport. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I just walked in the door, Bill. I just walked in the door. And he said, okay, go back to the airport. I said, you serious? Yeah, go to the airport. There's a ticket there. There's a ticket for you. Grab I had 10 days off. I called the cab, picked up my suitcase, went back downstairs, got into the cab, went to the airport, went to the desk, and I said, I think you have a ticket for me. And she said, well, what's your name? I gave the woman my name. She said, where you going? And I said, I don't know. She said, you don't know where you're going? I said, no. So she looked up my name. She said, you're going to London. You got a first class ticket. You're going to London. I'm like, oh, okay. So I get to London. Bill picks me up from the airport. He doesn't tell me why I'm there. We get into a limousine. We're driving through London. We pick up a journalist. We do an interview, put the journalist out. We continue through London. We pull up to a house, get out the house. He knocks on the door. Big black dude opens the door. We walk in. I walk in behind him, and the guy says, he's in there. I still don't know why I'm there. Who is he? Bill walks in. I walk in behind him, and there's a guy. I can see a guy sitting on the floor. I can only see his back. So I walk in. Bill walks in front of him and says to him, he says, hey, man, this is the guy I've been telling you about. This is Bernard Fowler. And I'm not making it, this is not exaggerated at all. The guy turned around, and it was Mick. And I looked at Bill. He never said anything. The only thing I remember as we're driving through London, we're talking about all kinds of music, and he said to me, something like, hey, man, you like the Stones? And I said, oh, man, I love the Rolling Stones. First record my dad ever bought for me was a Rolling Stone record. And he said, and he like kind of chuckled. And we kept talking. So again, I'm in the room. Mick turns around and he looks up at me. Bill leaves the room. And I'm standing there. And Mick says, hey, come down here on the floor. He had a guitar in his hand. He said, come down here on the floor. And, you know, he's strumming and I'm humming. And I was there maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours or so. I just arrived. And so he gave me a cassette. He gave me a cassette to listen to of what we were going to be working on the next day. And I just happened to have a Fostex 4-track cassette recorder. So when I got back to the room, I did all these vocal arrangements for these songs. The next day we go to the studio and they're playing the songs and Mick says, we're going to work on this song, whatever song it was. And I said, okay, cool. Before we do that, here, let me play this for you. And I gave him the 4-track cassette recorder, and he hit play, and he's listening to it, and he looked at me. He said, you did all of this after you left me? I said, yeah. And he said, okay, let's do that then. We're going to do that. And I went in, and that was She's the Boss. That was my introduction to Mick Jagger.
Wow.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So
that
Bill,
story, by the way, Scott, that story will be in the book.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. So Bill was just trying to like freak you out, or just he was trying to.
And you know what? I don't even know if Bill even gave it a second thought. Because at that time he was doing so much. He was working on so much music. It was just conversation, just moving along. But I guess at some point I guess, Mick he was looking for somebody to sing with, or somebody to help him with some vocal stuff. And, Mick suggested me, and there I was.
And the producer on that project was Nile Rodgers, right?
No, well,
No.
It was both. Bill and Nile.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So did you also meet Nile at that time?
Nope. I only worked on the tracks that Bill did.
Okay.
They didn't work together. They worked separately.
All right. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that sowed the seeds of this career-long relationship with Mick and the other guys in the band. How did that evolve and develop from there?
Well, I didn't during that time. The only one that I met was Mick. Okay, so after I did Mick's album, and I went back with Herbie for another year and a half to do the road. I get off the road, and someone called me and said, "Hey, Bernard, man, I heard that Mick Jagger has been in town looking for a male vocalist. Have you heard any?" I'm like, "No, I've not heard from him or anybody. No one's called me about it. I don't know. I don't know anything." And so at that time, I was getting ready to do some dates in the south of France. It was kind of an all-star band, the cats, a bunch of guys from New York that played with the big boys, and it was being put together by Carmine Rojas. Carmine Rojas, bass player, played with Rod Stewart, and he played with David Bowie for years. And so we were at SIR rehearsing, and I took a break to go to the bathroom, and so I walk out, and there's an entourage coming down the corridor. And in the middle of the entourage was Mick. And I kind of caught eyes. And, I said hello, and he, nod. And I remember going back to the room I was rehearsing at for this show in the South of France. I remember I walked in, and I said to Carmine, I said, I just saw Mick Jagger walking up the hallway, and said, he kind of acted like he didn't know me. And it, kind of pissed me off. So Carmine said, don't worry about it. Carmine's like my big brother. Carmine, he's from New York. He's from Brooklyn. And I used to go to Carmine's house to hang out with him and talk to him, because Carmine was one of the first guys that I ever knew that had been on the road. He played, he was damn near seasoned. He was part of LaBelle, and he was doing David Bowie. And so as we're in there, we start rehearsing. A girl walks in the room and asks, she said, "Is there a Bernard Fowler?" And it's funny because nobody said anything. We're all looking at the girl. It was, I remember it was feeling like, who's this girl and why is she asking for Bernard Fowler? Who is this girl? And so finally I said, "Well, I'm Bernard Fowler." She says, "Mick Jagger's looking for a male vocalist, he's doing a tour and he's looking for a male vocalist, and we'd like to know if you'd like to audition. And she gives me a tape with 4 songs on it and lyrics, and she leaves the room. And he didn't say hello to me when I saw him in the corridor. Now he sends this girl in here to ask me to audition. I had sung already on his first solo album. So now I'm insulted. So when she left the room, I said to Carmine, I said, fuck that, man. I said, I sang on this. I said, I worked on his solo record. What's this audition shit? I said, fuck that. I'm not going in there to audition. I'm not going to audition. And Carmine, being the big brother, grabbed me by the arm and took me in the corner of the rehearsal room and gave me a talking to. And he said to me, quote unquote, you fucking go in there and do that audition. He said, even if you don't take the gig, go do the audition. And he said, you go in there and you kill him. I went in the bathroom. I put my Walkman on. The songs they were Stone songs that I was familiar with. I'm a Rolling Stone fan. I was a Rolling Stone fan already. So I walk into the room, and of course he's got the hottest band. He's got shit hot band. Jeff Beck had just left. He had just left. So the band was English guy by the name of Richard Cuttle on keyboards, New York guy Philip Ashley on keyboards, Doug Wimbish on bass, Joe Satriani on guitar, Jimmy Rip on guitar, and I realized that they had been in they had been auditioning. They had been in New York for quite some time, so they auditioned a lot of singers. So when I walk in the room, one of the guys looks at me and kind of crosses his arms, and he looks at me and the look on his face was, oh fuck, man, we hit not again. Here's another one. We got to do this shit again. Here's another guy. Here's another singer, That pissed me off more. So I walked up on the stage, and they started playing, these songs. And I channeled that anger. And I was spitting fire. I spat fire at that audition.
Like a crossfire hurricane.
I was a fucking crossfire hurricane. At the end of the last song, I gave them the tape, the lyrics. I left the room, went back to my room to rehearse. 5 minutes later, the girl comes in and says, we'd like you to go on tour. We'd like you to, do the tour, the tour, and rehearsals are gonna be da. And I said, well, I ain't doing it. I can't do it. She said, excuse me. I said, no, I can't. I said, no, I can't do it. She said, well, when can you do it? I said, after I do my gig. After the gig, I'm here rehearsing. She left the room and she came back and she said, okay, we'll see you when you get back. So that was my first road work with Mick Jagger, and that was my introduction to Doug Wimbish.
There's much more to this great Truth and Rhythm interview. Just continue on to the next part of the episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. and become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you very much.